here in Uganda cannot be overemphasized, and as I said earlier on, as clearly provided for under the Article 29 of the Ugandan Constitution, the cause of freedom of conscience, expression, movement, religion, assembly, not forgetting association, and now more than ever, we look at the electoral process on the eve of the 2021 general election. I'm joined by Ms. Ida Nachiganda, who is the Director of Complaints, Investigations and Legal Services, to my left, and to my extreme left, Mr. Bionabye Kamadi, who is the Director of Research, Education and Documentation. Lady and the gentleman, many thanks for making time to speak to us.
It's a pleasure and a good evening to our viewers.
Yes, let me, as I've kind of laid the ground, the Constitution is a very, I think, very far-reaching. It touches on so many facets that it would be very unfair to just limit it to just one thing. But this discourse, of course, is going to concentrate primarily on, of course, the electoral process and freedom of expression. I think let me start with you, Ms. Ida. Just touch for me what the core basics of freedom of expression, how they are catered for in the Constitution of Uganda.
Okay, thank you, Arnold, and good evening to all our viewers out there. The freedom of expression is a very pertinent or important right or freedom in any democracy, but more so in our current contexts as we are preparing for elections, as we are delving into campaigns. The members of parliament completing nominations today, so they're going to start the campaigns officially. We are waiting for the presidential nominations. The local leaders are done with their nominations. So we are going into campaigns. And campaigns involve expressing oneself, you know, selling yourself to the voters, and also the voters expressing themselves to you as someone who has offered themselves up for nomination or for election. So it's a very important right or freedom in any democracy. And like you've rightly said, our Constitution provides for it under Article 29, which actually provides for the freedom of conscience, the freedom of expression, which includes the freedom of press and the media. So what do we mean by the freedom of expression? This means the freedom for one to impart, to seek, first of all, to seek, hold opinion, seek and impart information, either orally or in writing, through the media, through art. We've seen people communicating through cartoons, through artwork, or through any other forms of media platforms. And under these, it includes the digital space, where we have social media. So there's been a lot of communication on social media, and that is where this is also provided for. So yes, that is the freedom of expression in form of defining it.
There's a very fascinating word in, under this article. There's a bit protection of freedom of conscience under the freedom of expression. How does a legal practitioner define freedom of conscience? Because, well, conscience as a dictionary definition would go for a person's moral sense or of right or wrong. But what then would be freedom of conscience, if we could just touch that?
I'm going to talk about freedom of conscience in our everyday setting. Arnold, you often find people making the statement, what did your conscience tell you? Okay? What did your conscience tell you? It is that inner voice, that conviction that enables you to make a choice. It manifests through your choice because you've been convinced by it through your conscience. So once again, relating it to our current context of the election period, is that the freedom of conscience is very important for a voter and also for any candidate offering themselves up for for election, because as a voter, I should be able to be convinced by the message you are giving me as a candidate, so that I can be able to make a choice freely, without coercion, to make a choice on who I am going to elect. That is the freedom of conscience, and it is very important. They move hand in hand with the freedom of expression, because the freedom of expression is a manifestation of my conscience, of the freedom of my conscience. Yes.
It's quite fascinating. Let me bring you in, Mr. Kamadi here. When we last spoke on Monday, you left me with a sentence that just had me pondering for quite a minute, which was, where your right stops is actually where other people's or another person's rights actually do start or commence. I might be paraphrasing here, but basically, am I right in...
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this just leaves me, what Ms. Ida is alluding to, the freedom of conscience, you know, your inner moral compass, you know, facing true north. What did your inner self tell you? That then, on the eve of elections, as we're having this conversation a few months away from elections, how do we contrast that sentence that you left us with last week, which was, where your rights stop, and contrast that with freedom of expression, being cognizant of other people's rights?
It's interesting, and that statement remains valid every time one is talking about human rights. It is clearly stipulated under Article 17 of the Constitution. It's one of the duties of the citizens. Very, very important. Yes, you have your freedom of conscience. I also have mine. Now, we are in a public space. How do we reach a compromise is the most important thing. And this is the gist of our discussion this afternoon. You often find some people who, I should say, maybe are highly opinionated. Yeah. And for them, it is my way or my way. Actually, even the traffic jams we face in this town, you could extend it to that kind of thing. This one is saying, I have to go, I'm on the right. This one is also saying, I'm on the right. And at the end of the day, 30 minutes, 1 hour, you are there. If we all appreciated the fact that where your rights stop is where other people's rights begin from, then we would have stability in society. And what we are going to be talking about as we go along is it is this freedom of conscience, the inner voice she's talking about, that defines whether you are FDC, whether you are DP, NRM, NOP, or an independent. That is the starting point. But the most important thing is an appreciation and understanding that each of us is entitled to our own opinion, freedom of conscience, freedom of thought. Such that if you are NRM and I'm DP, I should not look at you as an enemy, because we can never think the same way. That's how God created us. Actually, when she was explaining the aspect of freedom of conscience, I was thinking here, the everyday life she talked about. We are here at Serena. If we crossed over the other side for a meal, you may order for posho, and I order for matoke. It starts with the conscience. What do you want and what do I want? So you cannot blame me for ordering for posho, because for you have ordered for matoke. We think differently. Our tastes and preferences are different, and we must appreciate that. And it is going to take us to the next aspects we want to talk about.
Definitely, and of course when you bring in the issue of the posho and the matoke, it leads us to the other issue, which definitely has to be diversity. There's a lot of offerings on the menu, and it just leaves you then wondering how cognizant of these facts, that there's so much diversity going around in a country with over 50 tribes, that whoever is in charge of this particular poll has to be aware. I'm not only speaking about the state bodies, but also ordinary citizens like you and I. How tough is it then to pass this message on to everyone?
We should always go back to the starting point, and that is Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But even if you didn't look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, just look at a human being who has been born today. We are all born equal in dignity and rights. That is the most important thing. And nobody should discriminate against another on account of religion, tribe, sex, political ideology, age, or any other status. Now, Uganda as a country, we are a product of the Berlin Conference. We found ourselves in an entity called Uganda. That's why you see on border points, like in the north, some of our brothers
on the other side of the Kenyan border.
From the other side, they have relatives this side here. This is true on all our borders. And within the borders, we are here in Uganda, you cross the Nile, you find Basoga. You go this side, you cross River Kafo, you find Banyoro. Down here, immediately after Masaka, you are in Ankole. From Ankole, you are in Kigezi. Now, that kind of arrangement requires that we appreciate the fact that we are all born equal in dignity and rights. We are human beings. That's why the framers of our Constitution, under the national objectives and directive principles of state policy, in particular objective number 3, talked about national unity and stability. Unity in diversity. Everybody should work towards ensuring that there is unity, stability, and cooperation by everybody. If if we decide to look at ourselves as Baganda, as Banyoro, as Banyankole, then chances are we may be taken up by these tribal sentiments, one's ethnicity, and forget the fact that we are all born equal in dignity and rights. Simply explained, we talk about human rights, this is the real lives we lead. Talk about the right to food. My assumption is lunch is over in most places of Uganda now, going by our culture. But dinner is coming. Now, when it comes to time for dinner, it doesn't matter whether you are a Muganda, a Munyankole, or a Munyoro. Hunger is hunger. That is the underlying point. So if you are in possession of power or food for this matter, or the required resources, and you have a duty to supply, don't supply those who speak your language. And then the other one who doesn't speak your language, that one can go and suffer. That is the gist. We are in a pandemic right now of COVID-19. It has no political inclination. Neither does it recognize tribe. So we are talking about the right to health. It's for everybody. There are places in this country, which I'm aware of through our research, where people go to a given clinic where the doctor or nurse is of the same tribe. And if you go there and you are not a tribe's mate, you are not attended to. Yeah. That is very dangerous. So in terms of national unity, cohesion and stability, we need to emphasize and re-emphasize the importance of tolerance, cooperation, understanding, to ensure that we are all our rights are protected and promoted. It is even more compelling during the electoral process we have entered into right now, because there is a lot of name calling in some areas. Some people focus on are you a born of this place, and not the issues. Because what is going to propel the country forward in terms of development, it starts with the freedom of conscience we are talking about. God created us differently with different IQs. That's why you have 50 pupils in a class. There is the first and the 50th. That should tell us that we are never the same. Therefore, when you are going for an election, attention should be paid to who has the most convincing ideas that are going to propel a village, a district, a country to another level. Because if you decide to look at my tribe, I'm afraid it may not help you. And if I happen to live here in Uganda with you, and I'm not a Muganda, but I have the most brilliant ideas, allow me sell my ideas to the electorate as either they vote based on the issue. In the same way, children excel in class than the others. In the same way, these people were nominated yesterday and today. That's how they perform. That's how we look at the quality of debate in parliament. That's why we look at the quality of debate in the district councils. So we should not look at one's tribe, one's religion, or one's sex. So, and when we do that, then we are harnessing and fostering unity in diversity. We should be able to live together peacefully and we coexist. Our major focus should be what one has to deliver, not what one is.
I definitely hear you there. Let me bring you in, Ms. Nachiganda again. He's alluded to a few things, and one thing that usually comes up on the eve, well, when getting into the elections after the nominations are done, is the issue of hate speech. You know, name calling, as Mr. Kamadi has mentioned. How do we categorize this, and going forward, what for you would be one of the ways to just evade that particular direction?
Hate speech, like you said, it usually becomes prevalent around this time as candidates are jostling for space and trying to convince the electorates about their suitability to be elected. And then that's when we find ourselves delving into hate speech, you know, mudslinging, abuses, and all sorts of talk. Hate speech is verbal or non-verbal expression that is intended to oppress or intimidate an individual or someone on the basis of their belonging to a particular group. For example, an ethnic group, if persons with disabilities, or a political group, as is the context in currently, or even religious affiliation. So someone will say something to demean you because you're from a particular ethnic group, or you subscribe to a particular religion, specifically to demean you, but also to lead others who are listening to him to also look at you in that same light of demeaning you, marginalizing you, discriminating against you, which is against our fundamental principles. My colleague talked about equality and dignity. We are all equal before the law. And so that is really the impact of hate speech, is that it leads to one being discriminated against. And in this particular context of the election, it could cost someone the vote, or it could lead someone to totally keep away from voting because of the hate speech that was used against them. Hate speech, though, in the context of freedom of expression, most times people use hate speech as a justification that it is their right under the freedom of expression. But we need to remember a fundamental principle that human rights move hand in hand with duties and responsibilities. So the same with the freedom of expression. As you're enjoying that right, you have to enjoy it responsibly as a citizen of this country. Because it's not an absolute right under our constitution, it's also subjected to limitations. So hate speech is not recognized under freedom of expression, and it is not protected under the freedom of expression. Actually, it's hate speech and war propaganda. Those are not protected under the freedom of expression.
It's a bit interesting because I wouldn't even say a bit. There's a bit of a gray area. Maybe you could just elucidate more for me, because yes, on one end there's a freedom of expression. Then on the other, we've seen cases of cyber harassment, you know, because someone goes online and then they say a lot of things which are channeled towards one particular person. As we're getting ready for elections, it's very easy for someone to come out there and say one thing or another about either, let's say, you're vying for an office. How then do you draw this very thick line between what passes for freedom of expression and what then goes on to the other side, which is just totally unacceptable?
Well, the line most times is drawn, for example, through judicial interpretation. You'll find someone may decide to go to court as a result of what someone said against them, either through the digital space, through print media, or through a campaign. And then the court will decide. The court will explore all the facts of the case and will make a decision on whether this actually went beyond the protections under the freedom of expression. And of course, it has to look at all the parameters. First of all, whether the person it was directed at belongs to a particular group, and whether it amounted to a demeaning utterance when it comes to that particular group, and whether that particular group was marginalized as a result of what this person said. All these parameters will be considered by the court in making a decision on whether this amounted to hate speech or not. We have laws in place. We have laws in place that make it an offense for one to say certain things that lead to demeaning or oppressing or intimidating particular groups, or that lead to, at extremes, violence. Yes.
It's quite fascinating. Let me bring you back in, Mr. Kamadi, because just on Monday we're talking about this scientific campaign, as it's come to be known, and ultimately the hybrid election. And definitely the two of you are very conversant, way conversant with the Constitution than I am. There's provisions such as the Computer Misuse Act of 2011. And this, if we're to use that as a backdrop to just catapult us into trying to appreciate us not doing away with other people's freedoms or our responsibilities to start with, how do we have the scientific campaign, which is predominantly going to be geared using the social media platforms?
Well, I should say this. I have always had, or we have always had people say, for instance, public servants, that your name was deleted by the computer from the payroll. The computer does not delete anyone's name. The starting point, what is important to note, is in the protection and promotion of human rights. Whatever right is protected offline should be protected online the same way. When we are talking about internet and human rights, we are talking about the computer. These machines do not operate themselves. It is you and me who will go there, type in something, click a button, send. Yeah. So what we are discussing in terms of our conduct offline is not significantly different from what happens when one is online. That is the starting point. And the Human Rights Council is very clear on this. Whatever is protected offline should be protected online. Now, it goes back to Article 29, freedom of conscience. Because before you express yourself in the manifestations she has talked about, either through speech, through print media, through association or assembly, all those put together make a complete whole of freedom of expression. It starts with the mind. So it is you and me who go to use a computer. That's why it is called the computer misuse. Otherwise, ordinarily it is supposed to be used properly. Now, the moment you misuse it, so whatever is protected offline, it should be protected online, because it is we people who command the computers and all these gadgets. Something funny happened to me. I entered the lift at the place of work here, and I forgot to press the button 3. So for some time I was there stuck. Now, if you think it is the lift that does magic, it's not. It is me. I may not even know how the lift was manufactured or something, but it is me. Who knows that I'm going to floor 3?
But Mr. Kamadi, then my question would be, isn't a word such as misuse subject to interpretation? Because if, let's say, I am not, there's manifestations that are relative, if I could say, subject to interpretation per se. So if you say misuse, I think it depends on what side of the fence that you're sitting on, is what I would say.
That's why my colleague has talked about judicial interpretation, who determines that it has been misused. But the starting point is, what is it that you have posted, is really the most important thing. And it's not any different from appearing on radio and you say things which are not supposed to be said. I think what we need to emphasize when it comes to freedom of expression, freedom of speech, I'm free to come here and engage in a conversation like this one responsibly. But should what I'm saying deviate from what is generally acceptable, and like we say in a free and democratic society, then it will be cause for I'm sure the police is listening and the other security agencies. I may not leave this place if what I begin saying here is sensational or amounts to inciting violence. And we generally know acceptable behavior in society. We really know that what I'm saying is right or what I'm saying is wrong. And it is bound to cause incitement, or these words promote peace, unity and stability. Because if you tell, for instance, voters in a given district that we have actually a challenge, there are 2 ladies I know. One of them, both of them are married not from their home constituencies. Now, the people in those constituencies are saying one of them has come to stand in a constituency where she was born, but where she does not live. The same Article 29 gives us freedom of movement. I'm free to go and live in Kitugum now, as long as I'm legally there. And if the people of Kitugum show wishes, they can choose to elect me. But now, this lady is born in a given constituency, and the majority of the constituents are saying, go and stand where you got married to. That is already an affront to her own rights. So this is what we are saying. Now, it starts in the mind. Now, if I go on the computer and type it in and spread it, that becomes computer misuse. It really in a layman's language and sense. Yeah. So nothing, whatever is protected offline should be protected online. It begins with our minds.
Right. I think let's just put a small pause on this particular conversation. We're just delving into the freedom of expression and all these other provisions in our particular constitution as we do gear up for our 2021 general election. Let's take a quick break. I'll be back with my esteemed panel just after this. Welcome back to this particular talk show as we do delve into all the provisions of freedom of expression as we do gear up for the general election in 2021. To my left, I'm joined by Ms. Ida Nachiganda, who is the Director of Complaints, Investigations and Legal Services at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. And to my extreme left, Mr. Bionabie Kamadi, who is the Director of Research, Education and Documentation, also at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Lady and the gentleman, again, thanks again for making time to speak to us. But very briefly, Ms. Nachiganda, before you were touching on, before we went for the break, the issue of offensive communication, as Mr. Kamadi was alluding to the same. Maybe we could just touch that, then you wrap that up with hate crime and hate speech, rather. And now it amounts to a crime, I understand.
Yes. So I wanted to pick up from where my colleague left off and also from a comment you made when it comes to offensive communication and the relativity of it all. Because what is offensive to me may not be offensive to you.
And by the time you say it, you think it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Or what is annoying to me may not be annoying to you. So that is why they say it's relative. But that's when judicial interpretation comes in. And you as a victim of this act, you then are supposed to show how it offended you or how it annoyed you. Okay? Yeah. And don't leave it to prediction, don't leave it to someone to imagine that he or she was annoyed to this extent. That is when you can prove that it offended you, offensive communication. And I'll make a perfect example of the case of Dr. Stella Nyanzi. Yeah. They were, she had two offenses. She was charged for two offenses, offensive communication and cyber harassment. Yes. Offensive communication, she was acquitted. And this is because the threshold for annoyance was not proven. You know, you have to prove that you were annoyed to this extent or that it affected you to this extent. And of course, the cyber harassment, we know how that went. She was eventually acquitted. And this was because of the fact that she was not accorded a fair hearing. It was on a technicality. Yeah.
Maybe just very briefly on the issue of hate speech and how that actually might amount to a crime.
Hate speech, like I said, is not protected under the freedom of expression. And so when it's not protected under the freedom of expression, then it moves to the realm of a criminal offense. And we have offenses under the Presidential Elections Act. We have offenses under the Parliamentary Elections Act. All of them forbidding people to say things that demean or incite violence. We also have offenses, most importantly, under the Penal Code Act, promoting sectarianism, promoting sectarianism arises as a result of someone saying something or doing something that will degrade or cause ill will, create alienation against a particular group of people. Usually the sentence there, when one is found guilty, is 5 years under the Penal Code Act. We have inciting violence. Inciting violence may arise from hate speech. Someone may say something, he will rile up a particular community or group that they are talking to, and as a result, those people will go and cause violence to whoever it is the statement was directed to. So in this context of the elections that we're in, inciting violence against someone or against a group of people because they belong to a particular political group or they hold a particular political opinion is an offense under the Penal Code Act. And the sentence usually is 15 years if one is found guilty under Section 83.
It's quite baffling because I think, let me bring you in, Mr. Kamadi. Just a few months ago, there was an issue around some comedians who had a few things to say about our dear
country
heads and the country, the heads of particular institutions. And on one end, one thing that strikes me the most is the number of cases that are dropped without particular charges, or should I say there's a lot of indictments. And on the other end, there were no charges that were pressed per se. And we're now talking about sectarianism. What does it say about the country if there's so many cases that ultimately there's no charges that are pressed on ultimately?
Well, I think the issue here is on the investigative arm. Before you prefer charges, seek to confirm that what you are actually doing is professional, is right, and you are not driven by any other considerations. I think that's where the problem starts from. I was watching the two popular programs last night, the Frontline and the On the Spot here, and there was a discussion on the raid on Noop. Yeah. Some analysts brought out the aspect of it being politically motivated. Then those who are in charge of law enforcement are saying because the argument was, why was it done on the eve of nominations? But those responsible for law enforcement are saying the crime is crime. There is no timing, any time. So sometimes some of these aspects find themselves in a politically charged environment. But I think the most important thing is to uphold professionalism, because of course it doesn't look well if for every other time you prefer charges, you can't sustain them, and dismissals all the time.
Let alone the financial implications.
Oh, certainly it has, but and it has something to tell about those who are in charge of conducting investigations. Yeah.
Definitely, quite fascinating. Again, if you're just joining us, we're delving into issues of freedom of expression, what actually surmounts to that as we do get ready for the 2021 general election. One thing that is quite fascinating, again, when it comes to this the two issues, which is one on one end hate speech, and on the other there's the issue of human rights, of course, not particularly limited to limitations to the freedom of expression, of course, Article 43 of the Constitution that you've alluded to, Mr. Kamadi. If you could maybe just allude to that more, Mr. Kamadi, on the same, when it comes to, yes, equality is one thing, but there's non-discrimination on the other. And we're now getting into this election where we're trying to toe this particular line. You know, give me what the constitutional demarcations are, article-wise, at least what says about what in the Constitution? I'm sure you have these off the tip of your fingers.
Well, you've said it. We are all along talking about freedom of expression and Article 29. You have freedom of expression, but that freedom should not prejudice other people's rights under Article 53, especially when it comes to public order and public security in this particular case. Because what you say under Article 29 has the potential of causing violence, causing conflict, people cutting each other on account of what you have uttered. Therefore, it is important for everybody, especially now as we go into the campaigns, to know that the campaigns should be issue-based. Don't look at one's tribe and take advantage, because when you do that, the tribesmates of such a person will forget about the issues and now focus and narrow the discussion on tribe. Now, you will be claiming that you're exercising your freedom of expression, but you are not mindful of other people's rights, those, for instance, who do not belong to your ethnic group. That is the whole issue. And what is causing problems as we discuss the electoral processes, the starting point, and we shall continue talking about it, under Article 38 of the Constitution, everyone is free to take part in the affairs of government. The biggest challenge we have is political actors who look at their opponents as enemies. That should not happen at all, because we are in a public space. You do not have any right over me to say that you will be the chairman, LC Wanu Serena. I'm as qualified as you are. I'm a registered voter. I'm a citizen. Now, Article 1 gives power to the people. Article 38 is saying we are both free to either participate as leaders or as voters. So the choice is mine. Therefore, if someone comes up to say I would like to be chairman LSU One Serena, because you have probably been a chairman for the last 10 years and you think you have a sense of entitlement, that's not right. Some politicians take certain constituencies as personal to holder. That is not right. And we are urging them to respect the Constitution. Anybody is free as long as he or she has the required qualifications.
You've captured me there. Anybody is free. And I want to bring in the director in charge of complaints and investigations. I was quite baffled the other day when I learned that the whole Attorney General was putting forward proposals, including barring candidates from running as independents after participating in party primaries. Now, this just has your head spinning, because on one end, yes, we're all free to participate in the electoral process, but how does the Attorney General of a country put forward such or even consider such proposals like barring independents running if they lost the primary? Is this the same Uganda that we thought had a decent constitution? Maybe Ms. Ida, you could start this, then Mr. Kamadi sums it up.
Well, it's good you've said that it was a proposal. It was a proposal because the whole concept of independence, and it takes me back to what Mr. Kamadi said, is that we all have that freedom to offer ourselves for elective positions. And so where I've not been able to go through in a party primary, that's where the concept of independence comes in.
Yes.
Because I should also have that option to stand as an independent. And as we speak right now, that's the position of the law. That's why I'm saying that was a proposal. And right now, in the dispensation we're in, it's okay for one to stand as an independent.
Yeah.
We actually saw many of them going to be nominated yesterday, even today.
After the failed petitions.
After the failed petitions, yes. So that is in response to their freedom. They're expressing their freedom under the Constitution. Yes.
Mr. Kamadi.
Well, like she has said, it was a proposal and it was rejected, as you are aware. Actually, it was against the Constitution. It was a proposal which was unconstitutional.
But this is my problem. If Arnold tabled that, I would understand. But how does the Attorney General have that being brought to a floor?
We are not here to evaluate the performance of the Attorney General. The good thing is it was a proposal and which was rejected. But going back to the whole issue of independence, you see, for the growth of our multi-party politics and democracy, it should worry everyone that for the last so many years or 5 years, you have been NRM. And overnight, because you have a grievance, you become independent. Being independent is not about standing as an independent on paper. It should be ideologically grounded. And this is very, very critical for our political actors. Strictly based on the Constitution and the law, they have every right. But it has ethical and moral issues. Because that's why you have the entire, this element of FDC leaning independent, NRM leaning independent. Then the question is, how independent are you independent? If you are independent, stand alone on your two legs, at least physically. But most importantly, it's ideological. What do you stand for? The idea should be, I do not buy the ideology of the Democratic Party. And therefore, from the word go, everybody knows that you don't subscribe to the ideals of the Democratic Party. I don't subscribe to the ideals of the movement political organization. But to lose in a primary, you go for conflict resolution, then the outcome is not in your favor, and then you tell us that you are an independent, is to say the least unfortunate.
I mean, of late we're hearing people say they are on loan from another political party.
But that is the whole thing I'm saying. It affects the growth of our multi-party democracy.
And this, for me, pains me the most because...
You have a right, yes, as an independent, agreed, but everybody knows you are not independent.
But again, this is something that we touched on even on Monday. The need to sit down and spread a manifesto and tell people this is what I'll be bringing to the table. I was quite appalled when a member of parliament the other day offered his electorate Ludo, you know, a board game which is based on probability. And I mean, if it was chess, maybe I would think, well, maybe. But Ludo, based on, and this is what he had to offer his electorate. And it takes you, it maybe shows you how far off we are from what a thriving democracy should even look like. Maybe you could just touch on the two, on that particular issue, the two of you, then we'll just wrap it up.
You see, we still have a long way to go. Standing for an elective office should not be an issue of excitement. Some of the voters, with due respect, just get excited. The underlying point goes back to what does one stand for? What is one going to do? Political actors should not tell lies. I usually hear President Museveni talking about those who tell lies, you know, implying it's not good. We all know it. Because if you come and tell people you are going to deliver what is not deliverable, then your ambitions are different. That's why we need a population that subjects the information that is being given out there to reality, to a reality check in our country here. Yeah, so the the whole element of why do we stand for political positions should be interrogated. People should understand between Arnold and Kamad, who is more suited to lead Serena LC1 in terms of deliverables, not in terms of how appealing Arnold is, or this is my OB, others vote face value. I have heard all these sorts of things. Then the outcome, you are going to have somebody in the council who does not deliberate on matters that affect the welfare of the people. So we really need to listen to issues and issues.
Mr. Uganda, well, definitely Mr. Kamadi would beat me at the LC1 position. Have you seen his suit?
Very interesting. And he has comprehensively handled that issue, and I identify with what he has said. But I wanted to tackle something before we wrap up.
Yeah.
And that is on the issue of the limitations, particularly the limitation of this right. My colleague has talked about it. But we need to remember that we are in a democracy. So the limitation of this right under our Constitution has to be demonstrably justifiable in a democratic society. I'm going to break that down, Arnold. I'm going to break that down. Is that there are certain parameters one has to meet. For example, is the limitation provided for in the law? And is the law certain? Do people know about the law? Meaning that I know about that law and I know about the consequences in the event that I violate that law. That's the first one. The second one is that it has to be for a legitimate aim, national security, public order, public health, public morality. You know, that's the legitimate aim that is specifically provided for under the law. And then it has to be necessary, absolutely necessary. And when it comes to absolutely necessary, we are looking at the threat. What was the threat? And was the response in this case is the limitation. Is the limitation proportional to the threat? So these are the thresholds one has to meet in order for that limitation to be justifiable in a democratic society.
Definitely, proportionality, something that has often come to the core when we talk about such issues. Lady and the gentleman, I'm afraid we're running out of time. Allow me to accord each one of you just under 2 minutes to give us some final words. Mr. Kamadi, let me start.
Thank you very much. Elections are about taking state power, and therefore there is a lot of competition. But we are calling upon all people involved in the electoral exercise, voters and those who have stood to be voted, to be mindful of the stability and peaceful coexistence of the people of Uganda. Very, very important. What you say can easily cause violence, leave the entire village torn apart. That's not what we need. It should not be a matter of life and death. And the most important thing I will again emphasize is to know that there shouldn't be a sense of entitlement. These are public offices, these are public spaces. This is causing a very big problem. I've seen long-serving politicians taking offense that how can a younger person stand against me? It's not about age. It's about issues, you know. Or the other element is what does this old man still want? Is as long as he or she qualifies, let us look at the issues and what one is going to deliver. Therefore, unity in diversity is very, very important. Let us not be driven by our ethnicity, our tribe, our religion, but what are the issues one is offering. and that will give us quality leaders we need. You know, let's look at politics like a job interview. Let us assess people on who is better positioned than the other. Just like when people do an interview, the one who excels takes the job. Now the politics, yet is about numbers, but numbers should be determined by the quality that by the quality of the manifesto that one seeks to present and implement.
Definitely, Ms. Nachiganda.
Freedom of expression is a very important element in a free and fair election. We often find that during elections, people are very emotive, people are volatile. So we are appealing to the public, we are appealing to all those that are going to campaign, their agents, that during this time we should enjoy our freedom to express ourselves responsibly. Especially avoid delving into hate speech, which is going to lead to a lot of volatility in our communities, but worst of all, violence. We've already seen it happen during the primaries. We are worried about it happening during the campaigns on election day itself. So this is something that we can prevent, and we can prevent it through the words we say. So let us exercise our right responsibly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nachiganda. Allow me to thank my panelists today. To my extreme left, Mr. Bionabye Kamadi, who is the Director of Research, Education and Documentation at the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and to my left, Ms. Ida Nachiganda, who is the Director of Complaints, Investigations and Legal Services at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. That's where we'll leave it for this particular session, as we've been delving into freedom of expression, not forgetting the need to uphold unity and diversity during the electoral process. I'm Arnold Sagawa. Have a lovely evening and a splendid weekend.